episodes. 4 episodes. She did every episode for 7 years. She loved what she was doing. She was great at what she's doing.
Aaron Spelling created over 200 television shows and built a fortune worth $500 million. But when he died in 2006, something strange happened. His daughter ended up living in an RV with 5 kids. She couldn't afford basic medical procedures. She owed millions in taxes. People assumed the money was gone. It wasn't. The fortune was still there. It just didn't go where anyone expected. 2 months before his death, everything changed. What really happened inside that family has never been fully told. Aaron Spelling's life began quietly on April 22, 1923, in Dallas. Yet nothing about the world he entered was simple. His parents had come from aching places. His mother, Pearl, reached America on April 20, 1906, after fleeing the Russian pogroms that tore through her home between 1903 and 1906. She carried the weight of a first marriage that ended in grief when her husband, Sam Seltzer, was murdered in 1911. She later married David Sperling, a man from Poland who changed his name to Spelling after reaching the United States. Together, they raised 5 children, with Aaron as the youngest. The family lived in a poor part of Dallas, where Yiddish floated around the rooms more often than English. Stories have been told about cross burnings and hiding in basements, but those details never surfaced in any documented way, leaving only what is known and proven. As Aaron grew, the world around him pressed down harder than most children could handle. By age 8, the constant bullying he faced for being Jewish grew so severe that his body responded before his mind could. His legs stopped working. Doctors called it psychosomatic, a response to fear and trauma, and he stayed in bed for nearly a year. But that year did something strange and powerful to him. To avoid repeating a grade, he was given stacks of book reports, and he dove into writers like O. Henry and Mark Twain. Their stories opened windows he didn't know existed, and slowly a new part of him formed, the part that cared about characters, twists, and the rhythm of stories. There is no proof he read hundreds upon hundreds of books, yet the reading he did shapes the truth that his imagination began to expand right there in that quiet room. When he turned 19, he stepped into a different world. He enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces in 1942 and began basic training in Massachusetts before being sent to Fort Worth Army Airfield. While other soldiers drilled and marched, he found himself submitting sketches to camp review shows, slipping his creativity into military life. Soon he worked as a correspondent for Stars and Stripes, traveling through France and Germany to cover operations with a cameraman's eye. In Bavaria, a sniper's bullet struck the command car he rode in and wounded his left hand and knee. He received a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star for surviving that moment. While he recovered, he toured with a play called O Mistress Mine, performing alongside Lynn Fontaine and Alfred Lunt. No evidence shows him writing in foxholes or serving in the Aleutians, but the truth still carries weight. War changed him, yet it also nudged him closer to the world he eventually dominated. After the war, he returned home and stepped into Southern Methodist University on the GI Bill. He chose journalism and graduated in 1949. Hollywood waited next, though it didn't exactly welcome him at first. He worked small jobs, including being a band boy for a television show on KTTV, and fought for acting roles anywhere he could. Through the 1950s, he appeared in shows like Dragnet, I Love Lucy, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and Gunsmoke. He even played a beggar in Kismet in 1955, a moment that left him discouraged enough to rethink what he wanted. Claims about appearing with Marlon Brando in Truckline Cafe have no evidence behind them, so his early acting career remains rooted in the smaller but verifiable roles that slowly pushed him toward writing. By the mid-1950s, something shifted. He sold his first script, $20 Bride, to the Jane Wyman Show. The exact year drifts between 1954 and 1956 in different sources, but the impact stays the same. It marked the moment he stopped chasing tiny acting roles and stepped into the world where he truly belonged. Dick Powell, president of 4-Star Productions, saw his promise and hired him to write for Zane Grey Theater in 1956. From there, Aaron found steady work for the first time in Hollywood. He wrote 20 teleplays for the series and contributed to 11 more. Those long days in the writer's room shaped him. They taught him structure, pacing, and the pulse of a good story. In 1957, he rose to story supervisor, and by 1958 he became a full producer. Every role built on the last. Every script taught him something new. The Western anthology format taught him how to craft a full story within a tight frame. Guest stars arrived each week, and he learned how to highlight them while still pushing the story forward. In March 1959, he co-produced an episode called Man Alone. That episode became the pilot for his first television series. It sold to CBS and turned into Johnny Ringo. Johnny Ringo premiered on October 1, 1959, and ran until June 30, 1960. It only lasted one season with 38 episodes, yet it pushed Spelling into a new lane. When the pilot expanded to a full series, the cast changed, the scenes shifted, and he found himself guiding a show instead of pitching ideas from the sidelines. Even though Johnny Ringo ended quickly, it showed he could create a series from nothing. It convinced Dick Powell to hand him more responsibility, including producing The Dick Powell Show. One of its episodes introduced a stylish detective named Amos Burke, played by Gene Barry. That character led to Burke's Law in 1963, Spelling's first true hit. While his career grew, his personal life moved forward just as quickly. On April 2, 1953, he married actress Carolyn Jones in a Los Angeles synagogue. She was 23, he was 30. She later converted to Judaism for him. When they met, both struggled financially, working shows organized by Preston Sturgis at his dinner theater. Their marriage lasted 11 years until 1964. They had no children, but they carried each other through the difficult early years of his Hollywood climb. After the divorce, Spelling developed a reputation as a playboy until he married Carol Jean Candy Maurer on November 23, 1968. Inside the walls of 4-Star Productions, Spelling transformed into something bigger. From 1956 to 1965, he learned producing from the ground up. He worked on Burke's Law in 1963, and the show became his first major success. Its glamorous style, rotating celebrity guest stars, and polished tone became a signature he would repeat for decades. In 1965, he left 4-Star and signed a 2-year deal with United Artists Television. Soon after, on April 15, 1966, he partnered with Danny Thomas to form Thomas Spelling Productions. They rented space on the Desilu Gower lot and began building shows for ABC. Not everything he touched turned golden, and The Survivors proved that painfully. It premiered on ABC on September 22, 1969. With one of the most star-studded casts television had ever seen. Lana Turner led the show in her first regular TV role. Jan Michael Vincent, Ralph Bellamy, Diana Muldaur, George Hamilton, Kevin McCarthy, Clu Gulager, and Natalie Schiffer filled out the cast. It looked unstoppable on paper, yet the audience didn't follow. The show was crushed by Mayberry RFD, The Doris Day Show, and NBC's Monday Night Movie. After only 15 episodes, it ended on January 12, 1970. ABC tried rerunning it during the summer of 1970. In 1971, Universal even stitched 2 episodes together to form a TV movie called The Last of the Power Seekers. Nothing worked. Many stories have been passed around about Spelling's involvement with shows like The Virginian or offers to produce Star Trek, but none of those claims hold up. They drift into rumor rather than record. Even the idea that he launched Joker, Joker, Joker decades earlier falls apart when looking at the dates. But the Mod Squad tells a different story. It premiered in September 1968 and became a cultural force. 5 seasons carried the tale of 3 young undercover cops who were pulled from counterculture spaces and placed into law enforcement. Michael Cole, Peggy Lipton, and Clarence Williams III gave the show its heart. It tackled issues that other shows avoided, moving into racism, drug addiction, domestic violence, and the tensions that filled the late 1960s and early 1970s. Stories about Cole being discovered while busking cannot be proven, but his own memoir explains how a casting director spotted him at a reading of Picnic, which eventually led to Spelling offering him the role. Cole resisted at first, not wanting to act in a show that seemed to chase the same kids he related to. Spelling convinced him the series was different. It was about empathy. When Aaron Spelling first pitched Charlie's Angels in 1976, the reaction inside ABC was almost comical. Executives Barry Diller and Michael Eisner listened to the idea and walked out thinking it might be one of the worst concepts they had ever heard. But Spelling had a previous deal that guaranteed him $25,000 for a new pilot script, so the network reluctantly moved forward. Nobody expected anything from it. Then, the 74-minute pilot aired on March 21, 1976, and the entire network froze. The ratings exploded to a 54.8 viewing share, reaching 59% of all American households with a television. ABC could hardly believe it. They thought the numbers were a mistake. So they aired it again a week later, and the audience came back just as strong. That moment shifted everything. By September 22, 1976, the show premiered as a weekly series and rose all the way to 5th place in the Nielsen ratings for the 1976 to 1977 season, with an average rating of 26. It was the kind of rise nobody saw coming, not even the people who made it. While the show soared, Farrah Fawcett's story turned into its own storm. She left the series in May 1977 after only 1 season and set off one of the biggest TV controversies of the decade. Spelling Goldberg Productions hit her with a $7 million breach of contract lawsuit. Farrah pushed back and said she had started filming before her contract was even completed, so she wasn't legally bound to anything. The producers kept offering bigger deals, from $10,000 per episode to merchandising cuts to guaranteed film roles, but she turned everything down. The legal fight dragged through 1977 and 1978 until they settled. Farrah agreed to make 6 guest appearances over the next 2 years. Later, she told People magazine that the lawsuit almost destroyed her career because Hollywood had turned cold, and every door she knocked on felt bolted shut. To fill the space Farrah left behind, the producers brought in Cheryl Ladd as Chris Monroe. Fans were wary. They didn't believe anyone could replace Farrah. But on September 14, 1977, during the 2-hour premiere Angels in Paradise, the doubts faded. Ladd's charm settled in quickly, and viewers embraced her. That season, the show held on to its top 5 ranking, tying for 4th place with 60 Minutes and All in the Family. Production costs climbed to around $575,000 to $600,000 per episode, but the show remained strong. Over time, fans began calling the group of Kate Jackson, Jaclyn Smith, Farrah Fawcett, and Cheryl Ladd the Magic Four, sealing Cheryl's place in the show's legacy. A few years later, Spelling faced an even bigger challenge with Dynasty. It premiered on January 12, 1981, directly competing with Dallas, and it struggled. Viewers didn't care much about the Denver-based Carrington family and their quiet drama. Then Season 2 arrived, and with it, Joan Collins. Her entrance as Alexis Carrington during the courtroom sequence changed everything. That casting decision came from Candy Spelling, who had seen Collins on Fantasy Island and suggested her. Sophia Loren and Elizabeth Taylor were also considered, but neither worked out. Once Collins stepped in, Dynasty's tone sharpened and the ratings climbed. By fall 1982, the show broke into the top 10, and by spring 1985, it became the #1 show in America with around 30 million weekly viewers. In 1985, the show pulled off its most daring move. The Moldavian Massacre aired as the season 5 finale. With the entire cast asking for major raises, the producers needed leverage. So they did something wild. They created a grand royal wedding for Amanda Carrington. Costume designer Nolan Miller spent $150,000 on outfits alone, and Amanda's dress cost $10,000. Then, as the ceremony wrapped up, armed men stormed the church and appeared to shoot down nearly every main character. The screen froze on the chaos. Estimates vary, but somewhere between 25.9 and 60 million viewers watched that cliffhanger. People spent the entire summer wondering who survived. And behind the scenes, the move forced cast members to negotiate carefully, knowing the show could continue without almost anyone. Joan Collins understood her power. By season 6 in 1986, she refused to appear in the premiere until she received a higher salary. The writers had to shift her scenes to Linda Evans as the network waited. Collins eventually secured a contract worth $60,000 per episode, an enormous amount for the era. Her presence, paired with writers Eileen and Robert Mason Pollock, had helped carry the show from near failure to the top of American television. When Stephanie Beacham joined the 9th and final season in 1988 as Sable Colby, after the Colbys ended, her on-screen rivalry with Collins created intense scenes that fans still talk about. The Colbys itself had been Spelling's expensive gamble. It premiered on November 20th, 1985. Charlton Heston earned $85,000 per episode, and Barbara Stanwyck received $75,000. The show had big stars, expensive sets, and even won a People's Choice Award, yet its ratings appeared at number 35. Things got worse when the network moved it to Thursday nights to compete with Cheers and The Cosby Show. Stanwyck quickly regretted joining. After only 2 seasons and 49 episodes, the show ended in March 1987. Its final moment featured Fallon being abducted by a UFO, a cliffhanger that felt too strange for viewers and too late to save the sinking ratings. Spelling's next big turning point came with Beverly Hills 90210 in 1990. The show almost disappeared before it even started. Its first season, which premiered on October 4th, 1990, barely attracted viewers. Fox kept it alive only because they had already paid for 13 episodes and had nothing else to air. The surprise came when they decided to release fresh episodes during the summer while other shows ran reruns. That move changed everything. Teen audiences found it, shared it, and the show exploded across the country. Its success led to Melrose Place, Models Inc., and several later reboots. By the mid-1990s, Spelling had shows running on 3 of the 4 major networks, one of the greatest comebacks in television history. But success didn't erase tension. In 1994, Shannon Doherty left 90210 under a cloud of controversy. Producer Charles Rosen described her lateness as constant and disrespectful. During one shoot, she arrived at 9:45 in the morning for a 7:45 call after the entire cast had waited. What nobody on set knew was that Doherty was trapped in a violent marriage to Ashley Hamilton, whom she had married in October 1993 and divorced in April 1994, while also dealing with her father's decline. She kept all of it private. In a 2024 interview, she said the cast called Spelling and insisted she be removed. When Spelling later offered her Charmed in 1998, she was so hurt that she tossed the offer in the back of her car and tried to ignore it. Melrose Place carried its own wild energy. It stumbled in its first season with storylines about young adults trying to find their way. Viewers lost interest. Everything changed when Heather Locklear arrived as Amanda Woodward. She gave the series a new heartbeat, sharp and unpredictable, and ratings surged. The show hit its peak around season 4 and became one of Fox's biggest hits. Models, Inc. could not ride that wave and ended after 29 episodes in 1995. Melrose Place itself became famous for explosive twists, like Marcia Cross as Dr. Kimberly Shaw blowing up the entire apartment building. By the end, nearly every character had dated each other, and the intensity began to fade, but the series still managed 7 seasons, a huge run for a primetime drama. Through all of this, Spelling kept climbing. In 1996, he became the most prolific television producer in American history. By 2003, he had created over 4,500 hours of television. Guinness estimated that if someone tried to watch everything he produced 24 hours a day, it would take almost 7 months to finish. His 1996 resume listed 3,000 episodes across 218 producer credits. Forbes valued his wealth at $310 million in 1994. ABC was jokingly called Aaron's broadcasting company because of his influence. When he passed away in 2006, Forbes ranked him the 11th highest-earning deceased celebrity in 2009. His wife, Candy, later wrote that his shows helped shape American pop culture across decades. Aaron Spelling's story with Carolyn Jones began in a quiet way, long before the fame and fortune that later surrounded him. They married on April 5, 1953, when he was 30 and she was 23. And for the next 11 years, they tried to build a life that carried more love than money. Jones kept the roof over their heads by taking every acting job she could find, even the ones she later called pure trash, while Aaron stayed home and wrote. He never forgot how she supported him. He said it out loud more than once. And when they divorced on August 6, 1964, she didn't ask for a penny, which made the moment even heavier because she had carried most of the weight. Later, life turned upside down. Aaron became a multi-millionaire producer, while Carolyn's once bright career faded after her role as Morticia on The Addams Family. Even then, they stayed close. They kept dating after the divorce, showing they still cared for each other, but simply couldn't live under the same roof anymore. Years later, a new chapter opened when Aaron married Candy Jean Maurer in 1968. He was 45, she was 23, and together they stepped into a world filled with glitter and grandeur. Candy loved her jewels. People talked about her 40-carat ring and her 20-carat pendant. She once wore nearly $4 million worth of diamonds just to go to lunch. The two moved into what became known as the Spelling Manor in the late 1980s, the largest house in all of Los Angeles County. It was so opulent that Joan Collins, who worked on Dynasty, joked about stealing costume jewelry because she couldn't walk away with the designer pieces and wanted some revenge for being pushed around during contract talks. In 2004, the Spelling world shifted from glamour to tension when Tori Spelling married Charlie Sheehan at the family's 56,000-square-foot estate. Candy planned everything, spending about $1 million to make it perfect. She hired top wedding planners, top florists, and filled the place with beauty. Yet Tori walked away feeling shortchanged. Candy felt offended because Tori didn't invite enough of her friends. They fought over the smallest things. Sometimes they didn't talk at all, and this wedding, which was supposed to bring joy, instead opened the door to the rift that would grow larger in the years ahead, eventually shrinking Tori's inheritance to a fraction of what it once was. By 2006, Aaron's health began slipping. He died on June 23rd of that year after suffering a stroke 5 days earlier. His death certificate listed Alzheimer's disease as a contributing factor, a detail that raised difficult questions about his clarity during his final months. What made everything even more complicated was that his estate plan had been changed only 2 months before he died. The shift was dramatic. Tori's once large inheritance dropped to $800,000. It was less than 0.2% of the estimated $500 million fortune. Aaron told her before he died that $800,000 was enough to be set for life. It showed how far his understanding of money had drifted from reality. Candy became the sole trustee and primary beneficiary. Even people outside the family received more thoughtful treatment than expected, like $50,000 for an interior decorator and $25,000 for a manicurist. When Aaron collapsed on June 18, 2006, inside the legendary manor, his story was already drifting toward its final scene. He had built more than 200 television shows and created a $500 million fortune. Yet in those last moments, surrounded by the opulence of his 123-room mansion, his family was fractured in ways he never fully repaired. The Alzheimer's notation on his death certificate added another layer of uncertainty because it connected directly to the timing of the troubling will changes. 2 months before his stroke, in April 2006, Aaron reduced both Tori and Randy's inheritance to $800,000 each. It was a decision that landed like a shock across their lives because his mind was declining. Tori later said he genuinely believed that amount would last her forever. The bulk of everything went to Candy, who now held complete control. For the children, this represented less than 0.2% of what their father had built. It wasn't just a financial cut. It was a symbolic one that shaped the years that followed. The legal team around Aaron placed a no-contest clause inside the will. It meant that if Tori or Randy dared to challenge it in court and lost, they would lose even the $800,000. The risk was enormous. Tori met with lawyers. She thought about fighting. She knew the timing didn't feel right, and she knew her father's illness cast shadows over his judgment. But she stepped back, because one wrong move meant she would walk away with nothing at all. Candy held the reins. The clause held the threat. And the two children accepted the outcome because they had no safe path around it. What made the whole thing stranger was that while Tori and Randy were pushed into this corner, people with far looser connections to the family appeared in the will. The interior decorator got $50,000. The manicurist got $25,000. These were loyal workers, but compared to what the Spelling children received, their bequests made everyone look twice. Even extended relatives and charitable groups stood in the shadows of these unusual choices. When all was counted, Tori and Randy's combined $1.6 million barely edged past what had been given to people outside the family. When Aaron was laid to rest on June 25, 2006, in a private graveside service at Hillside Memorial Park, the air in that small circle was heavy. Candy, Randy, Tori, and Aaron's brother Danny attended. They stood there together, but remained divided at the same time. Only weeks earlier, Tori had reconciled with her father after years of distance, caused partly by her affair, her sudden elopement, and the public drama that followed. Candy later went on a radio show in 2009 and blamed Tori for Aaron's death, saying he didn't want to live after their estrangement. That moment at the funeral marked the end of Aaron's life, but the beginning of years of emotional fallout. After his death, the $500 to $600 million estate opened the door to the saga of the manor. The 5,500 square foot mansion, built over 3 years and finished in 1991, became the most expensive home in America when Candy listed it in March 2009 for $150 million. The house had 123 rooms on 4.7 acres and strange touches like 3 gift wrapping rooms, a doll room, and a silver storage room with humidity controls. But even with all its grandeur, it sat unsold for 2 years during a brutal real estate downturn. Candy eventually came out as the strongest figure in the estate story. As sole trustee, she had full power over everything. In 2011, she finally sold the manor to Petra Ecclestone for $85 million. It was a stunning $65 million discount from the original price, but still an all-cash deal. With those funds free, Candy moved into a 16,500 square foot penthouse in Century City. The original price had been $47 million in 2008, but she negotiated it down to $35 million in 2010. Her control over the estate remained absolute, as others collected their bequests, including the decorator and the manicurist. Meanwhile, Tori and Randy's share of $800,000 each became even harder to swallow as the scale of the estate became clear. Tori confirmed the amount on a television show when she was 42. She talked openly about how her father believed she could live off that amount for life. Her reality didn't match his expectations. She and her husband, Dean McDermott, fell into debt after debt. They owed over $259,000 in unpaid state taxes, more than $700,000 in federal taxes, and struggled with losses on property sales. Their Encino home sold for $2.5 million in 2011 at a $400,000 loss. Debts followed them everywhere. Even a $38,000 American Express judgment hit them hard. Through all of this, the Spelling estate stayed out of the courts. There were no inheritance battles, no bitter lawsuits. This was rare for a fortune of that size. The tight structure of the will and the ruthless no-contest clause blocked any major fight. There were smaller cases, like a defamation lawsuit the estate filed against a lawyer who claimed harassment. But the estate lost under an anti-SLAPP ruling. A separate case with a former private nurse was settled. And although people talked about an IRS audit leading to a $12 million settlement, the public records never confirmed it. The manor itself carried its own strange path once Candy sold it. Petra Ecclestone kept it for 8 years and sold it in 2019 for $119.7 million. That sale set a record in Los Angeles. Then, in August 2025, Eric Schmidt and his wife Wendy bought it for $110 million. They planned to use it for nonprofit gatherings. By then, the house had passed through redesigns, market crashes, and long stretches with no buyers. In 2022, it was listed at $165 million. In 2025, it dropped to $137.5 million. The house always drew attention, partly because it was enormous and partly because it was difficult to keep, a property that seemed to carry both prestige and burden with every sale. While fortunes moved and houses traded owners, Tori's own life drifted deeper into trouble. She shocked people in 2013 when she admitted she had blown through $15 to $20 million of earnings and inheritance. She said she never learned how to manage money because everything always went through managers. By 2017, City National Bank won a judgment against her for more than $219,000 after she and Dean defaulted on a loan. She also overdrew her account by $17,000. In 2020, American Express reached into her bank account and seized over $88,000 to settle a credit card balance. Her troubles began even earlier, in 2011, when health issues during pregnancy stopped her from working, and her reality show was canceled. She even admitted she couldn't afford a simple medical procedure for her husband and hadn't bought a purse in 3 years. The spiral kept getting worse. By the time her 2025 divorce settlement was made public, the full scale of her debt came out. She and Dean owed about $1.7 million. Roughly $1.2 million was owed to the IRS. Over $500,000 was owed to the state of California. City National Bank wanted nearly $395,000 with interest. American Express wanted another $37,000. She personally owed $288,000 to one person and $69,000 to another. Then, in 2023, after mold contaminated their rental home, she ended up living in an RV with her 5 children. Cameras caught them drying clothes outside the camper and sitting in plastic chairs. She later said her children suffered respiratory problems, allergies, and skin rashes for months. because of the mold.